Okay. All right. I think I'll just get started with the introduction, and then people can join as they come in. I'll just give Megan a minute to start the Facebook live stream as well. Okay. I think we're good. We're connected. Everything's working. Okay. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining Adulting 101, our series about learning those adult skills that nobody ever teaches you in school. Today, we're going to be talking about how to keep your laptop and phone going strong and how to do some repairs yourself. So today, well, actually, before we get started, I'm just going to briefly mention a couple of upcoming Brampton Library events. Just got to get our plugs in there. So we have two more Adulting 101 events happening this year. The next one is on October 29th, which is how to research just about everything. We're going to have a university librarian, a college librarian, and myself and Megan, two public librarians, talking about all those research skills that you can get from home. Everybody's studying from home, doing their schoolwork at home. You can't go into the library and actually ask for help anymore. So we're going to teach you everything you need to know to do that stuff at home. Then on November 3rd, we're going to have another one called How to Get the Job You Want. So that's going to be really great, a chance to perfect your resume, work on cover letter skills, interview skills. We're going to touch on a little bit of everything, and it's a great chance to ask some experts some questions as well. And then beyond Adulting 101, we've got a few other programs that you might be interested in. Tomorrow, we have a maker meetup. So this is a meetup event where we talk about different aspects of making things. So in Brampton Library, we have our maker spaces. And we're actually going to be talking about one of the pieces of technology we have in our maker spaces, the Silhouette vinyl cutter, as well as the Cricut cutter, which is very similar. And we're going to kind of talk about the pros and cons of each. We've got a special guest who has written a book about Cricut crafts. So we're going to have lots of cool stuff to talk about. Then October 15th, Megan and I are leading a session on how to spot fake news. So if you're concerned about internet misinformation and fake news, that's going to be a really great chance to learn a little bit more about that. And then also October 7th, we've got our True Crime Podcast Club is meeting then. And starting in November, we've also got some virtual board game meetups happening November 5th and December 3rd as well. So that's just a little bit of what we've got going on. I really recommend you check out our Eventbrite page or the Brampton Library website. We've got a calendar of events there where you can see absolutely everything we've got going on. And I think that's it. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to our experts for today, Paul Magder and Alvin Remitar, who are two of our regular Repair Cafe fixers. They help out with Repair Cafe Toronto as well as Repair Cafe at Brampton Library. And they're going to take us through a presentation, look at some tips and tricks, things that we can all learn. But also they've let us know if you have questions or if you're having a specific issue, feel free to speak up either in the chat or just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have it. They don't mind interruptions, so you're welcome to do that. If you're watching this through Facebook Live, you can also post some comments there, and we'll try to get those brought over as well so we can talk about your issues. If you have a specific issue with your phone or computer, we do recommend you join the WebEx meeting because that will give you a chance to actually talk directly to Alvin and Paul, and they'll be able to help you a little bit more easily that way. So I'm going to hand it over. Thank you so much, and we're looking forward to this great presentation.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Paul, and I'm going to start off today. We're going to talk about computers and mostly about laptop computers, Windows-based, and a little bit about cell phones. I'll be talking about hardware, and Alvin will be talking about the software. So I'm just going to start by sharing my PowerPoint. And here we go. All right. So the first thing before we go into detail, what I'm going to do is look at sort of common failures with laptops, things that commonly go wrong. We see a lot of these problems over and over again as part of Repair Cafe, where we help people fix their broken things. And so before we do that, I just wanted to identify the different, get our things with the components of a laptop. And a lot of these components are the ones that we're going to have trouble with. So the first thing that is actually not here is the power connection, which you can't see, but it's on the side usually where the ports are. And then you have your hard drive, you've got your plastic case, and the problem often we see there with the hinges. And buried in, and then the next thing is the keyboard, and then inside the battery. So often those are the key things that we're going to look at. Those are the things you have problems with. And then sometimes you'll have problems with your mouse or your CD player, but we probably won't go too much into that. So here are the hierarchy of failures that I've found as being the biggest problems. The first one is the power adapter. That's the thing that you plug in to charge your battery. The next thing that's very commonly a problem are the batteries themselves. Then one key problem is cooling. Laptops often get too hot, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Keyboards are the next most common thing I've come across. Then broken hinges, which is kind of a unfortunate problem that is difficult to deal with. And then finally, sometimes people have problems with their hard drives. So, all right. So I just wanted to show a little bit about our supplies for your laptops. Everybody's quite familiar with them, but the weak link is often the power supply when it comes to using your laptop. Unfortunately, they often have failures within the electronics inside a power supply. A power supply is what electronic technicians call them, or adapters. And what they're doing is they're taking 120 volts out of your wall and converting that into a DC voltage, which is what your laptop runs off, what your battery needs in order to be charged. And the voltage ranges between, I've seen it go anywhere from 12 to 24 volts, but often it's around 18 or 19 volts, which is pretty high for DC voltage. And often you'll notice that they get kind of hot. If you find that your power supply, the box there is getting hot, then you know you're going to be having problems soon. Now, the biggest issue, however, is the actual connection. So you can see on the bottom left what we call the plug that is attached to your power supply. So when you're not plugged in, you've got this plug lying around. I don't know where you're keeping it. Maybe just have it in your top bag nicely wrapped up like in the picture, which is good. Or some people might not realize how fragile that connector is, and they might leave it lying on the floor. So just be very careful with this piece of equipment. And also, please note, when you unplug it from your laptop, never pull it by the wire. Always grab the actual plug itself and carefully remove it. If you pull on the wire too often, you may end up breaking it. And the other weak link is the jack itself, which you see on the right there. That is, sorry, not the jack. That's the, yes, the jack. So the jack is just soldered onto that circuit board there, and it pokes out on the side of your laptop. So when you're plugging in your plug to your jack, you've got actually, you can see there's a little pin in the jack, and it has to go in that little hole in the center. And it has to be very carefully inserted. It's important that you don't jiggle it around too much, or when you have it attached and it's charging, you've got it supported on the table. You don't have it hanging over the edge, because believe it or not, that square silver jack that's on the circuit board can easily be broken off. And we see that very often. And that may be a reason why when you plug in your adapter, your battery doesn't charge or your laptop won't turn on. So what we can do in many cases is reconnect it. We have, but it's a very big job. You have to disassemble your laptop, and it's integrated into your whole system. So it's the kind of thing where if that's broken and you're not able to actually take it apart, you would have to replace your whole laptop. So that's unfortunate. All right, that's a very common problem that we come across. The next, which is all connected to the power supply, are batteries. And first of all, people may not be aware that batteries have a lifespan. They're not rechargeable batteries, that is, aren't meant to last forever. And in fact, they have what they call charging cycles. And that means when they're charged from 0 to 100%. So if you let your battery discharge all the way to 0 and then charge it up to 100%, that is a charging cycle. And you only have 300 to 500 of those, which seems like a lot. But if your battery is dying every day, then it's less than a year if you only have 300 cycles. So a battery, now what they suggest is that you never let your battery discharge below 40%. And you can see on your, usually you have a battery monitor on your laptop down in the bottom corner, so you can see what's going on with your battery. That means if you let it go down to 0 and you charge it up, then you're not actually having a full charging cycle. So say you only charged it up to 80%, that would be basically a half a cycle. So the theory is that you extend the life of the battery by charging it more often. That's may or may not be true, but it's also a good idea not to let your battery go down to 0. Now, another big problem with batteries is getting too hot. So I talked about, keeping your laptop cool. One of the reasons is because of your batteries. You don't want them to get too hot. So there's different ways of doing that, but one is to make sure you don't actually use your laptop on your lap. In fact, it's not a good idea at all, because your lap creates quite a bit of heat, and it actually creates a little pocket of heat when your laptop's there. So unfortunately, it's a bit of a misnomer laptop, but we recommend you don't use it that way. Also, in order to help your battery stay cool and last longer, you should only run programs that you're using. A lot of people just open up all kinds of stuff on their machine, and then they just let everything run. And often there's stuff running in the background, which causes is using up your battery. Going back to charging, when you do charge your battery, don't leave it plugged in once it's charged up to 100%, because that also, some laptops, the better quality laptops with good software do actually stop somehow disconnect the charging process once they're at 100% through software, but many don't. So you're just continuously sucking current into your battery, even though it's charged. It's not a lot, but it's a trickle, and that will actually keep the battery hot. And also, speaking of software, there's a lot of software on your laptop to help you manage your battery, and you should use that software. So it's usually under power save settings, where you can choose a mode of operation for your battery so that it's not being fully used all the time. One of the ways is to reduce the brightness of your monitor and setting the sleep mode to become as often as possible. We used to have the sleep mode because of the monitors were not LED, but now it's more to save your battery. And we'll talk a bit about this in the next slide, but cleaning the vents in your laptop. I'm just going to go to that next. So you have cooling systems in your computer, and it's not just for the battery either. It's for the whole, all the electronics. There's quite a complex system inside a laptop to move the heat away from the CPU, the big chips that are working to run your video and your processing. And you can see in the background on the bottom right that this is actually a copper channel that heats up, because copper heats up very easily, and that is connected, comes to your fan. It's called a heat sink. But what happens often is your fan gets clogged up. You can see here there's a lot of white powder on your fan, and this is actually pretty clean compared to what I've seen. And that powder dust is coming in through your vents, because what happens is the fan is blowing, and in some cases it has air circulation process where it blows in and out through your laptop. And even the blowing out area can get covered with dirt or get clogged up. So this is an easy thing to do just on a regular basis. If you look on the side of your laptop, you'll see the vents. Sometimes they're on more than one side. And all you have to do is, on a regular basis, like every week at least, if not more, just check them and make sure that they're clean and there's nothing blocking them. And when you're using your laptop, be a little bit aware of how it's sitting so that the vents aren't covered up by, there's no obstruction there. And if you're very ambitious, it's possible. A lot of laptops aren't that difficult to disassemble. Often they have a port, like a big opening on the bottom of them, which is just held on by a few screws. And you can take off the cover, and there you'll see your fan and it usually you have access to your memory, your hard drive, and some other components, your Wi-Fi card as well. And go in there with either a Q-tip or a toothbrush and give your fan a clean, and even blow out, if you see any dust, blow it out. You can get compressed air at the dollar store and just blow out as much as you can. Keep your electronics nice and dust-free. And you'll really save a lot of, you'll extend the life of your laptop quite a bit. It's like changing oil in a car. The more you change the oil, the better for the car. The more dust-free, the cleaner you keep your laptop, the longer it's going to last. Now, broken hinges is a tricky situation, and it happens. Sometimes it happens because people, act. You can't avoid it. Laptops are portable. You're carrying them around. They get bumped, and sometimes they fall. But sometimes it's just a matter of screws coming loose inside the laptop. If you see on your right here, there's mounting screws for your hinge, which now these hinges are actually have quite a strong spring in them, because you can feel when you open and close them, they kind of snap close. A lot of laptops don't really even have a clip. They just close, and it's the hinge that's keeping them shut. If you're buying a laptop, try and get one that has a clip that keeps the laptop closed, rather than relying on the hinges. Anyway, those screws, because there's so much pressure on the screws that are holding the hinge down. In this case, the hinges come right off, and we're just looking at the holes where the hinge was screwed down. But those screws can come loose, and eventually they'll come right off, and then you'll get something going on like this on the left, where the hinge is pulling apart the plastic, and often the plastic will break. Unfortunately, the plastic breaking is a big problem. I mean, it's mostly just, window dressing, in the sense that your laptop will still work, although it's more easily exposed to dust. But sometimes here there's clips that are holding the top and the bottom of your laptop together. If they break, then your laptop won't stay closed. The other thing is just the way people have mentioned that you have to be careful when you're opening and closing your laptop. Don't grab it on one side or the other. Try and make sure that it's opening evenly. The stress is on both, because if one hinge is more stressed than the other, it'll cause damage eventually to one or the other's hinge. These can be replaced, and it's because it's quite a common thing. If you go online, you look up your make and model of your laptop, very often you can find replacement hinges. However, if it's something damaged here in the mounting area, it's more tricky. But I did see someone repairing their laptop by actually drilling a hole right through the plastic so that they could put a screw up from the outside to replace this built-in thread here. So there are solutions. It's amazing what you'll find on the internet when it comes to getting tips and tricks about fixing things. And this was one I was very impressed by. The hinges will break too. I mean, there's a very tight spring in there, and sometimes the spring breaks, so you don't have any. You'll see your covers flapping without any. It doesn't really lock down, or the metal may fatigue that's attached here. But a lot of times, it's actually the mounting brackets themselves, and it could be they just came loose. So it requires taking apart your whole laptop to do that. It's a big job. Now, keyboards are another big problem. And the real secret, again, to keeping your laptop healthy is maintenance and being very careful with how you use it. So in the same with the cleaning the vents and making sure that you've got good airflow inside your laptop, you should be cleaning your keyboard quite often. You don't always see. What happens is dirt gets underneath. Here it's really bad. You can actually see the dirt, but sometimes you don't see it. It's underneath the keys. And if it gets built up, you may actually get a situation where your keys stop working or come off. So of course, when you're using a keyboard, you should not be eating or drinking around your keyboard. My daughter called me last week. She spilled water on her keyboard. And so what she did was what you're not supposed to do. She dried it off with a cloth and then turned her laptop on, and immediately the keyboard short circuited. So we'll talk a bit about that with phones if when they get wet, but with keyboards or if you get any moisture before you should immediately turn off the power and even take off the battery and let the equipment dry. So, but I mean, that's not that common. I know it's hard to avoid when you're going to cafes and so on. To use, so many people are working, well, used to be working in cafes. But now that you're working from home, you don't really need to do that. You can stop, take a break, go have something to eat, come back, and try not to eat and drink around your laptop. Also, sometimes you need to shake them out a little bit to get the crumbs out if you have been eating, and it's something you should check regularly. Oh, and by the way, you can replace keyboards. It's not that difficult. My daughter's case, for example, most laptops, the keyboard is not that difficult to remove, and it's again, you can find a replacement quite easily, either on the internet or if you take it to a repair shop, because it is a common problem. So keyboards can be replaced if not fixed. And I think this is close to the end of my part of it. The hard drives, and actually you can see in this picture too, this is your Wi-Fi card. And both these things don't fail that often. Hard drives do fail though, and it's very important that you always back up your hard drive. If you can save your important documents or important projects to the cloud, that's one way of doing it. It's also another way is to have an external hard drive that you can back up your internal hard drive. So it's a good practice to have because they do fail. So, and once they fail, there's not really much. You can sometimes recover your data, but it's very expensive. And they are meant to be replaced. Of course, a lot of people upgrade their hard drives to get bigger ones, but often they're, like I was saying before, you have a panel on the bottom of your laptop, and you can open it up and pull out your hard drive. They just kind of slide in with a plug on the side. They're easy to remove and replace. The Wi-Fi cards, I have had problems with those. They are made often to be replaced. So if you have problem with your Wi-Fi, it's not the most common problem. Usually it's a software thing or a connection thing, a signal strength thing, but they do fail sometimes and they can be replaced. And you can see up here is the battery. So I would suggest people become familiar with the insides of their computers. And check out the bottom of your laptop. See if you can open up some of these panels so you're familiar with what's available, accessible. Keyboards are not something I would play around with unless you have to. But open them up. You should be able to get, I mean, a lot of laptops, it's easy to pull out the battery, but some of them are not so easy. So just get familiar with your hardware as much as you can. All right, I'm going to hand it over to Alvin.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and grab the sharing from you here, Paul, to get the screen going. All right. Great. So hello, everyone. So Paul has talked a lot about the hardware inside of a laptop. I'm going to talk about the software. Now, in most cases, it's not always as simple as replacing a piece of hardware in a laptop. But in most cases, though, software can be pretty easy to troubleshoot, pretty easy to fix. It just comes down to, well, what is the problem. So what I'm going to be going over today are 3 ways that you can figure out what that problem is that you're having. And these are using 3 tools. 2 of them, I'm going to be covering Task Manager and Event Viewer, are built into every version of Windows, or most versions of Windows that you're using today. The last tool is WinDirStat, which we will be exploring here. It's an open source, downloadable, free tool that you can use for your hard disk and show you how much usage you have on your storage devices. So yeah, let's dig right into it here. Now, one of the first tools I'm going to show is Task Manager. Now, in and of itself, many people have probably heard of it, of what Task Manager is. You've probably used it, in fact. But Task Manager is a lot more than just something you go to when an application is not responding and you want to end its process. Task Manager is a very versatile tool in which you can gather a lot of system performance metrics from, as well as start and end processes. You can also use it to manage startup entries. So these are services or processes that are launched on system start. Now, what I'm going to go ahead here and do in my Task Manager, I'm just going to go ahead and expand in more details, and you'll see that there's a whole bunch more information that wasn't presented to me before. I'm going to go ahead here and pass through each tab to show an example of what you might see. Now, the Processes tab will show you all of the current running processes on your computer. Now, a process can be thought of as an application. However, it's not the same, and the reason why is because a single application can launch multiple processes. Now, I'll give you an example. If we go ahead and we take a look at something like, I don't know, let's take a look at local service here. So local service is one of the built-in services on the Windows operating system, and you can see that there are several processes listed under this. That's because this is a service host, and it's basically a container for these various services. So in most cases, when you come here and you see something that's not responding, you can end it. You just select that task, you click End Task, and that will end that task. Now, this is the most common use of Task Manager. Some least common uses is viewing performance. When you're viewing performance, this is really useful to check system performance for various devices that you have, various systems, subsystems. The CPU is one of them. You can check the current utilization, the current speed, threads, processes that are running. If your CPU is multi-core, you can also view the utilization for each core. You just go ahead and right-click, change graph to logical processors, and it will split it across. Another useful performance metric we can take a look at here is memory, and this will show you your memory utilization. This will show how much is available, how much is cached. And similarly, we can go ahead and take a look at Ethernet. Now, depending on the machine that you are on, you may see Ethernet, you may see Wi-Fi, you may see both. This is your network connection. So here you will be able to see how much data you are sending and receiving. You will also see some information about your network, such as the adapter name, what that connection type is, and the IP address. Now, your system may have multiple components on it. You may, in fact, see a video card here, or a graphics card, if you have a dedicated card, and you'll be able to see metrics for that as well. However, you can even view more detailed metrics if you check out the resource monitor. And there's a handy link at the bottom that you can go ahead and click. And that will pull up the resource monitor, which is another tool that'll show you a lot more detailed information split across each of those systems in the Performance tab. So you can open up CPU, for instance, and you can see how much threads each process is using. Similarly, we can open up memory, and we can see how much memory each process is using. So in this case, I have this WinDirStat process, and we can see in kilobytes how much that it's committed and how much is working. Now, let's take a look at the Users tab. The Users tab is great if you have multiple users that are logged into the same machine. Sometimes your machine is slow, and you're wondering why, and then you realize that you have had earlier in the day 2 other family members log into the same machine. And now, if they just log out, meaning they don't shut down the computer, they just sign out or log out and hand the machine over to you, there may still be some system processes that are running. If they switch user, meaning they still remain logged in, then everything is going to be running, and you'll be able to expand their user and take a look at exactly what is running and how much of the system resources that applications under their user are consuming. So if I expand user, I will see all the different processes and apps that I'm running under this user. It is important to note that when I'm looking at this will only show me processes for this user that I'm expanding. System processes you will not see here. Those you can find under the main processes tab under window processes. Now the details tab goes into those processes in a little bit more detail. We can see the exact username for what's running that application or process. User is my current user account. System, network service, local service. These are all built-in service accounts in Windows that are running core Windows processes. So whenever you're looking at details or you're looking at processes and you're looking at something to end, something that's using up a lot of CPU or a lot of memory, you're going to first of all want to filter by username, because you should only end processes that are being ran by you. If you end a system process, you can put your system in a pretty critical state in which it's not going to know what to do, and you might end up crashing your computer. This is often seen in a blue screen. So you don't want to do that. Just go ahead and end processes that are being ran by you. And in most cases, those will be the processes that are utilizing the most resources. And finally, we get to the Services tab. Now, the Services tab is pretty useful because here we can see some services. Now, there's a difference between a service and an app. While an app is something like Task Manager that we can interact with, it's in the foreground, it has a GUI, we can click stuff in it. Services are backend. They happen in the background without you even knowing. They start, they stop, they do some cool stuff, all in the background while you're doing whatever it is that you're doing on your computer. Now, just like an application, services do use resources, and you can view them under processes because they do spawn in a process of their own. Here, though, is where you'd manage those services. So you can stop those services, you can see which ones are stopped, which ones are running currently. You can even right-click them, open services, which will open up another tool where you can view more information about those services. And in this tool, you can also see the startup type. Startup type is pretty important because in here we can set which services we want to boot on startup. If we have some services, say for, I don't know, say you're running Steam, which is a game delivery platform, or say you have some kind of Java updater that runs every single time on system startup, and it's a service, then you can go ahead and change its startup type to either manual or just disable it altogether, and that should make your computer boot up a lot faster. Now, these are some really good ways that you can utilize Task Manager. Another good one that I'm going to close off with Task Manager is how to spawn in processes, because people usually go to Task Manager to kill them. But it can really bring processes in too. A key example of that is Explorer. Sometimes your Explorer, which is the main interface, meaning your start menu, any Explorer windows such as file explorers that you have open, all of these fall under Explorer, and sometimes they get really slow and unresponsive. So you go ahead and you end Windows Explorer. All of a sudden, though, everything around you goes black. This is the only window you see, and you start panicking a little bit. Now, don't worry, that's fine. That is completely intentional because you've just killed that process. So how do we go ahead and bring it back in? Well, we can go to File, Run New Task, and we just type in that process name. And just like any other application, Explorer is going to go ahead and launch, and you'll be given back your desktop and your start menu, all the other things that you love and enjoy. So that's one cool tool that you can go ahead and take advantage of. Another more advanced tool is the Event Viewer. Event Viewer will show you a lot of logs on your computer. Now, logs are going to be captured as events, meaning each event or each log entry can be seen as an event. And you're going to see them for a variety of things. You can see them for Windows, meaning the system itself is creating logs. You can see them for applications, security logs, system logs, and some applications, they even create their own advanced or their own custom logging area, and they'll fall under this category over here. Now, one of the most useful use cases for Event Viewer is if you blue screen. Now, whenever a lot of people blue screen, they either rush to take a picture of it because you can't really screenshot it, or they just write down the error code on a piece of paper. However, those blue screens, if you ever see a blue screen, it's because the system has acknowledged, first of all, that there is some kind of critical error, and it has stopped itself to save itself, to save your data, to save any important information. That event, that act of it stopping itself, creates an event log. So if you go to System, you'll be able to catch it over here. Something such as a blue screen would appear as an error. You'll also see a lot of information level logs. These are just basic start and stop. So in this case, the Windows Update service entered a stop state. Something else entered a stop state. This service over here started. It's just a lot of information. You'll see mainly three different categories. You'll see information. You'll see warnings, which have an orange triangle. I don't believe I have any here. Doesn't look like it's. Nope. That is good. Or you will see some errors, and they will appear with a little red circle and an exclamation mark here. Now, once you select it, you can expand this box here, and it'll go ahead and give you a description of what that error is. You can go to Details. It'll give you the exact same thing, just expand it out a little bit more here, along with some codes. And whenever you run into a problem and you capture this event log and you're wondering what you should search up, it's usually this description here. You can also go ahead and search up an error code if it's given. In most cases, it'll also be in the description here. And of course, we can view logs for other things. So we can view logs for security, we can view logs for application. Security is mostly auditing. Auditing meaning, okay, this user logged on or this user logged off. There was someone being authenticated onto this machine, that sort of thing. And there is one final tool now that I'll go over here. Also pretty useful is WinDirStat. Now, WinDirStat is a third-party open source tool. Open source meaning that the code is freely available out there, so anyone can take a look at it, modify it, tweak it to what they want. In this case, WinDirStat is really useful for determining disk utilization or storage utilization. All you do, and I'll show you what it looks like when you launch it initially. When you first launch it, it's going to ask you to select which drive you're going to want to scan. Once you select that drive and you hit OK, it's going to take some time. It might take 10 or 15 minutes. But at the end of those 10 or 15 minutes, it's going to output something similar to what I have here. It's a very colorful rainbow of rectangles, and these give you a very graphical representation of what is taking up a lot of space on your computer. So I can give you an example here. If I go ahead and I click, let's see. Let's go ahead and wait for it to load up here. Cool. So if I click one of these smaller rectangles, this is going to bring us to where that file is on the file system. It's going to tell us how much size it takes. and it's going to show us what that extension is as well. So in this File Explorer, you'll be able to browse to that file. You can delete it if you want. You can view more details about it. You can do a whole bunch of stuff from here. Now, one of the most common use cases of WinDirStat is to delete large files off your computer that you don't really need anymore. So if I click this big red rectangle, it's going to go ahead and take me to wherever that is on my disk. Now you'll see that these rectangles, they're positioned and they're shaped and they're colored in different ways. The positioning of them usually correlates to where they are on the file system. As you'll see, all these small files are positioned around each other in this kind of area over here. That means that wherever they are located on the file system, they are most likely together. So these small files are most likely core system files. If you take a look in there, they're in C Windows. That is the location for a lot of the core files that run your operating system. This red file now, after we've clicked it, has been pulled up in the Explorer here, and we can see where it is. We can see it's in my documents. We can see the size of it. And we can see a percentage here. This percentage is how much of that folder, that parent folder, this file takes up in terms of storage space. So if we just ignore this file for a second, we take a look at its folder, which is files. Files is 2.7 gigs in size. If we expand it, we'll see that this file is 100%, meaning it's 2.7 gigs of that 2.7 gigs. So say if you had two files here that were split across inside of this files folder, and they were like 1.3 gigs each, then they would both be around 50%. Now this is really cool because now you have a perspective of, okay, here's a big file, here's how big it is, and here's how much of my system storage it's taking up. So now you can take action if you want to delete that file or explore here, meaning open up a Windows Explorer so you can go directly to where that is. Or you can view more properties about that file too. All right. And that concludes the tools here that I wanted to cover. There are some alternatives for Linux and Mac OS X, in which we will share near the end of our call here. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass your attention back to Paul.
All right. I'll continue on here with my little PowerPoint here. So these are all the things that Elvin was talking about. All right, cell phones. We're not going to spend too much time. We don't have a lot of time left. But on cell phones, there's not as much that you have to work with, really. And there's really only a couple of key issues that are common. But again, here you can see all the components of your cell phone. And they're quite complex little items that you carry around in your pocket. Here is a motherboard, essentially, just like a motherboard in a laptop. This is your screen glass cover, and this is the actual display screen. On the glass cover, you have some electronics, which allows you to do touching everything and making things happen. And the screen is the display. You also have some memory that you externally can control, your SIM card and your SD card. And of course, here's the other key component, the battery. All right, so the most common problem with cell phones, broken glass. And this is, I would say, unavoidable in, a lot of cases. I have to admit, I've broken the glass on my phone more than once. It's not really, it's not easy to avoid. everybody's going to do it once in their life for sure. It's just the nature of the items. They're very portable. You stick them in your back pocket. You connect them to your headphones. I would suggest if anybody can get Bluetooth earbuds, they're much safer because that's how I broke mine, by pulling on my earbud wire, and I think that happens a lot. So, but never fear, the broken glass can be repaired. I know a lot of times you can keep using them because even though they're cracked, the electronics, the touch thing is still working, the touch circuitry. And in this case, the actual the LED display is also broken. But or it may be just that sometimes they glue them together, and that may be what's happening here. But often this part will also get broken, so you can replace it. And the cool thing is that it's such a common thing. You just put in the make and model of your phone on the internet. You can find replacement parts, and not only that, usually they provide the tools for you to replace your glass. It's not that easy. It's like out of 10, it's like a 7 part the difficulty, but it can be done. If you aren't comfortable with it, it'd be nice to get an old phone. If someone has an old broken phone they gave away, you can practice on that. But it is very satisfying to change the glass on your phone. Now, as I mentioned, sometimes they're a one piece. They have the glass and the display are completely melded together, and so you have to get both. And you have to determine, you can tell by the operation of the phone if it's just the glass or if it's the display, because your picture will be bad. You'll have problems with the actual picture if the display is damaged. So you can, of course, take it to be repaired. There's many phone repair shops, and it's definitely worth doing. It's a bit dangerous, I would say, to continue using a phone with cracked glass. You're bound to get some slivers in your fingers eventually because it just keeps getting worse. So I would advise getting it repaired or doing it yourself. Also, being aware, of course, as much as possible, trying not to let it happen. But as I said, it's very common and more than likely will happen once at least in your life. Now, the other big common thing with phones is dropping them into water. This happens all the time, or they get wet in some way or other. And I just wanted to talk about putting your wet phone in rice, because this is a common myth. I call it a myth. It's very widely promoted on the internet if you look at how to fix a water damaged phone. But rice is really not a good idea. It does work sometimes because rice does absorb moisture, but the trouble is it has a lot of dust. Rice is like a starch. It gives off powder, and that powder actually can cause more problems than the moisture. In fact, the problem with water is not water itself, it's the stuff in the water. There's a lot of different minerals and impurities that they're the things that actually cause problems. So if you get your phone wet, the first thing you do is turn it off if it's on, or don't turn it on. Make sure you don't turn it on to see if it's still working. Keep it off, take out the battery, take out all your cards, and then if you can, a lot of phones, the back comes off where the battery is. If you've taken out your battery, you've already opened it up. Some phones, it's not so easy to take the battery out, unfortunately. And in fact, that's becoming more of an issue these days. But they can be taken apart, and that would be the best option. Wipe down as much as you can the moisture, and then let them dry. There is an alternative to rice called silica gel packs or silica packs, which you often find when you buy a new phone or a new piece of electronics. They have these little packets that actually absorb moisture, and you can buy those at now they're available at even Home Depot and Canadian Tire. So it would be a good idea to actually keep some of those around, and then you can put your phone in a container with these packs and let it sit there for at least 24 to 48 hours. There's other techniques which you may find on the internet, but they do require you to disassemble your phone even more. So this is the main thing. If you can't take out the battery, at least make sure you don't turn on the phone. So then one more thing, I think. Oh no, so that's it. So I'll let Alvin take over.
All right, thank you. So let me go ahead here and I'll share my screen again. Now, when it comes to the software in smartphones, this is where things start to get a little picky, mostly because when you're looking at software on a smartphone, it tends to be a lot more restricted than typical software on a laptop, especially if you're on an Apple device. Now, smartphones, the software is designed to be as simple and intuitive, and that comes at a cost. That cost being that there are some things that the user is just full on blocked from doing, full on blocked from seeing. Now, today I'm going to show you one way in which you can view some information about your phone that you wouldn't traditionally be able to view elsewhere. This is a debug tool that is built into most Android devices. It can be accessed in different ways, so you'll find out that there are different ways that you can get to this screen that I'm about to share. But at the end of the day, they're all going to roughly have the same kind of metrics, the same kind of stats about your phone. Now, when you are looking at your phone, if you go ahead and open up the dialer, which is the main phone app you may use to go ahead and call someone, and you enter in the following combination. Oh, it just disappeared. Let me enter it in a lot more slower this time here. All right. And I'll hold off on putting in that last character, but the last character would be an asterisk. Now, when you enter this in onto your phone is going to go ahead and pull up a debug screen. Now, this debug screen is going to share some metrics, some info about your phone, about your cellular connectivity, your Wi-Fi connectivity, so on and so forth that you wouldn't traditionally be able to access without using a debugger tool. Now, this is what's called a secret code. If you go ahead and you take a look on Google, you take a search for them, they are known as secret codes. Android devices and iOS devices have a plethora of them that are available. The tricky part is finding one that works on your device because they are vendor specific, meaning if you have a Samsung, the same code might not work on your HTC. However, when you go ahead and enter in one of these secret codes, let's see if we can get this launched here. Might have to reopen my phone app. Let's try that out here. Okay. And let me go ahead. Oh, I figured out. I just got to copy and paste it here, and I'll paste it into the WebEx if anyone's interested in trying it out for themselves. All right. Oh, that is not it. All right. So when you enter it in, it's going to pull up this screen here. Now, this screen might look a little bit different on different devices. In fact, the code might not even work. It might just do absolutely nothing, and that just means that this code is not the right one for your device. So if you go ahead, take a search online for whatever vendor you have, Samsung, Android device secret codes, and you will go ahead and find some. Really, they're not so secret. They're just shortcuts to opening debugger tools that you would normally need to use in ADB, which is a debugger tool that you'd launch on a PC to access. But in our case here, we used a dialer and we've gotten to the screen. Now in this screen, we can view things such as Wi-Fi information. And this is where things can get a little advanced. You're going to see things about your Wi-Fi status, your RSSI, which is your signal strength. You can see your network state. If I refresh my stats here, I'll see some more information. I can see the SSID of the network I'm connected to, my IP address, my MAC address, my link speed, which is theoretically the max I can transfer, or data speed I can transfer on this network connection. We can go a little further too here. We can take a look at our Wi-Fi API, and these are direct functions that we can use to interact with our Wi-Fi chip that is in this phone. So we can get some connection info. We can also disable, we can disconnect from our network, enable the network. This is basically if you have disabled your network. So if you just click this button here to disable it, then that performs the exact same functionality. You can also see usage statistics, and these are pretty useful if you have a plethora of applications running on your phone, or if you just want to see how long an application's been running. You can view it from here. And this will just show you a big list of all those apps. And finally, a last metric that you can see here, if we go ahead and take a look into phone information, is this will show you some information about your device. Now, this is all correlating to your cellular connection. So in this case, we can view information about what our service is, our network type. In this case, I'm connected to an LTE network. And you can view some other information such as your signal strength. You can even run a ping test using your network. You can view information as well to see if you're roaming, what your call redirects are, and status for things such as GPRS. Now, if you scroll down in this window, you'll see some more features, and these you can actually interact with. Similar to disabling and enabling your Wi-Fi, you can turn off or turn on your cellular radio. And you can view some other and interact with your cellular antenna in some other advanced ways that you traditionally wouldn't be able to through the advanced interface. Now again, all of this information is really great and useful. A lot of it might not make sense initially, and that is thankfully why we have Google these days, because you can go ahead and take a search and quickly learn about the different features and functionality that your phone has. This screen may look a little bit daunting, but in time, if you go ahead, you search up one of these terms at a time, you'll find out a lot about your phone that you've honestly never known before. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass your attention back to Paul.
Okay, I think I just wanted to show you one last thing on the PowerPoint, which was where to help get fixing your devices or learning how to fix your devices. So one of the, of course, everybody knows about YouTube. It is amazing. You wouldn't believe what people have posted up there regarding fixing things. And I would say 90% of the time, if you have a problem and you want to know what to do about it, there'll be a YouTube video to help you out. People are just so generous with their knowledge. Now, there's also a great company called iFixit, which is in the States, but they also have a Canadian website. And they have also amazing mixture of guides of how to fix not just electronics. They actually have all kinds of things. I think they even have cars and big, appliances in there. But they also for sure have phones, computers, tablets, and they'll show you step-by-step process of how to open things up, how to replace parts of common problems. They also sell tools. That's how they do their business. But often you can get tools at the Toronto Tool Library. In case I should have put them up here actually. And otherwise, it may be worth investing in a simple tool or a small number of tools that you would be using more than once. And then finally, Repair Cafe Toronto are right now, unfortunately we're not actually having any events, but we are helping people with their problems. And so if you do want to contact us at our email, we will respond and find a way to help you fix your problems. That's it. Thank you very much. It's been great to see you all, and I'll hand it back to Rachel.
Can I actually add one thing to your wonderful list of resources for helping your things get fixed? We're also partnering Brampton Library with Repair Cafe Toronto and Sheridan Mission Zero and Fix It Clinic on November 14th to hold a virtual repair cafe.
Oh,
yeah. So you can register through Fix It Clinic's website, which I can put here. And also, if you're a fixer yourself, some people on this call might be fixers themselves, you can register to help as a fixer. Or if you need something to fix or a little of both, you can register. And Fix It Clinic, they're also American, but they run global virtual Fix It Clinics all over the world. So we've attended Fix It clinics in Sweden and in the States and all over. So yeah, definitely check out their blog for more information. But those are great resources too, Paul. Thanks for, and of course, Repair Cafe Toronto is one of our great partners. So definitely check them out too.
All right.
And Erin just mentioned in the chat they have a Discord as well. So if you're already using Discord as like a communication method, then that's a great way to connect with them too. Thank you so much, Paul and Alvin. I do want to open it up. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to either unmute yourself or put something in the chat. We can stick around for a few more minutes and see, but we haven't had anybody come up with any specific questions yet. So I'm not sure if people are just waiting till the right moment. But I know that there was something helpful there for everybody, for sure, in terms of both hardware and software. And just, I think you're right, like learn about your own devices, and then you're going to be better at maintaining them and repairing them later. So that was super great advice. Yeah, I don't, Megan, is there anything coming up on Facebook? I don't think so.
No questions on Facebook.
Yeah, and the chat is just lots of thank yous.
Yeah, lots of people just grateful for all of the advice.
Oh, there we go. Here's an actual question.
Okay.
Is there a way to enable a Wi-Fi hotspot through the debugger on Android? Alvin, that's probably a question for you.
Paul was speaking, but he's
sorry about that. I was muted.
Oh, no, that's okay.
All right. So let's see. Okay, Victoria, is there a way to enable the Wi-Fi hotspot through debugger on Android? That's a good question. So through that screen that I was sharing, it might depend on your vendor device. So not all debugger screens would look the same. You're going to have to try it out on your device and see if you have that option to enable your Wi-Fi hotspot. If you can enable your Wi-Fi hotspot through there, though, you can certainly enable it through settings and vice versa. You should go ahead and just check out the settings on your device first. I can show an example here of what that would look like. Let me get this shared over here. Okay. So I can quickly show an example of what that would look like if you were to do it through settings. Very simple process. It'll look different depending on the version of Android you're running, but usually just runs down to go into settings, go into Wi-Fi, and oh, that's the wrong location. Let's back up here. We want to view more connection settings, and then you will see that there's a tethering and mobile hotspot entry. From here, you can set up your hotspot. You can also configure your passwords and the kind of authentication schema you want to do that through. Now, if there is a way to enable it through the debugger, it might not be through the built-in debugger on your phone. It might be through the USB debugging tool or ADB, which I will go ahead and share. ADB is a part of the Android SDK. It is a development tool, a CLI tool. It's known as the Android Debug Bridge that developers use when they are testing apps on their phone. And not only that, but benchmarking phones as well. So that tool, once you download the Android SDK, it's a command line tool. Once you've got your device plugged in via USB and you've enabled USB debugging, you go ahead and you can utilize that tool. You'll see a listing of devices that you have plugged in when you run ADB devices, and you'll be able to perform a whole bunch of debugger features. There's a variety of things you can do. It's all within that documentation page. And for those that cannot see the link or are not in the WebEx, if you just take a search online for Android ADB on Google, it'll pull you up to the developer.android.com documentation where you can read more about this tool. Okay, I hope that answered your question there, Victoria.
Last call for any other questions. Otherwise, I think we're going to wrap up. All right. We'll leave it there. Well, thank you so much, Paul and Alvin, for your time today. It was great. It was a really useful workshop for everybody. And thank you. Yeah, and to all of our attendees, we welcome you to attend our next Adulting 101 session in October. And just keep an eye on the Brampton Library calendar on our website for other great programs coming up.
Thank you very much. Lots of thank yous coming through the chat.
Yeah.